Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our last introductory class into Scrum. This one we want to make it a simple step-by-step guide into how to work on Scrum. Now, for the webinar, just to explain what will happen next Wednesday, we'll make a team and then would use Scrum to do a project. So the webinar will be a practical use of Scrum in working on a project. So that's what we'll be doing. So today we are doing the last step-by-step introduction to give clarity into the whole idea of Scrum and give a bit of an idea of how it's used. So I'll get back to the presentation. Now, to begin Scrum, you have to first understand, the first thing you need to understand is what is a project, and then you also have to understand what is project management. So a project, everybody does a project. So that is among the most, if you wake up in the morning, you have the first project, which is called getting ready. You're preparing to dress and get ready to start the day. That's your first project. So a project is just the most basic of things, of a few tasks that you put in order to be able to get to a specific outcome. Outcome of the morning would be ensuring you're out of the house, well dressed, and ready to start your day. To achieve that, there are a number of activities, maybe shower, put on the dress, select what to wear. Now, most of the projects in life would be more complex, so it's not just the simplicity of waking up. In this example, we have a house that is being built. So to be able to build a house, you have to normally do, you have to have the design, you have to choose location, you have to get workers. So to be able to do all that and put it together, there is a need to be able to have project management, and then to manage that means you have a team leading everybody to be able to attain that goal in a given time within specific resources. So if you are building a house, you have to know where to source the materials, you have to negotiate for quality, cheaper materials. So as the project scale up, the more the complexity, they'll involve much more resources from money. Now, when you get specifically to, especially in IT, we have a bit of a difference, that if you're doing a building project, even now you can do a project, a building project in Scrum. That means you'd ensure you do the project in a way that you can get usable incremental growth that keeps growing. Now, when you're working on Agile, so in project management, Agile then changes to be an iterative approach. That means you keep repeating the same cycle, but in the same cycle, you ensure you have an incremental output. So every time you repeat the process, there'll be an incremental output that will happen. So that changes the mindset of traditional project management. So in the traditional project management, where it's one linear process, start to end, In Agile, it means you keep repeating and you keep getting things better and the product growing. Among the guys who started using this Agile approach were the motor vehicle companies like Toyota in Japan, and they changed how cars are made by companies like Mercedes, where you have a whole design process for the plant. So Toyota started to design things in components. So instead of making the whole car, then you first have a team that makes the engine. There's another one which looks at the transmission, and then some people to put it all together, but each of them are continuously growing. So the team for the engine will continue in the research of the engine to make better engines and keep improving the vehicles and making new product and product lines. Now, Scrum is a framework of Agile. So in Agile, you have very, very many methodologies that are available to you. You have even extreme programming, you have Kanban. So Scrum is a specific framework, and a framework is more of a set of rules. So Agile is more of a principle or a concept. Now Scrum is a very clear set of rules of how Scrum now is, so the rules are fixed. So if you tell a company that you want to operate a Scrum, it means you have a playbook to borrow from. You have a particular script to say we need to be able to make this standard. Now most of the time Scrum means you need to have a way you review requirements of whatever you're making, and that is put in something called a product backlog. Now once you have a product backlog which grows at any time, so if anybody gets an idea, you write it down, so you always have a product backlog. Next thing is you have sprint planning. Sprint planning is where you'd pick specific items from the product backlog, or you can be able to get, based on the analysis and thinking, get new things to do. And these are ideally the things that you do within the sprint. Now, the sprint would be a fixed timeline, which would be a week or 2 weeks, maybe a month, but most of the time not more than a month. And within that time, you need to finish all the sprint backlog items that you've put to be done. Most of the time, this sprint process will involve analytics, design, building, testing, and Scrum now goes way and above just software, and nowadays you're able to run business. For example, in Ducis, we still do, we don't only look at the software in terms of coding, we look at it in terms of how are we marketing, how are we selling. So all those are put as backlog items. So we use Scrum to do more things than just the traditional coding aspect. But because we are a software development company, we'd be looking largely still at a product and looking at all the other items of a product beyond just the coding. If I may add a point, that among the biggest challenges we get in software development, especially with top hackers, is they may be very good in the coding, but then they may miss out on the other aspects. From even delivering very good code to a customer, nowadays it's done through a customer relationship. That means you need to relate well to the customer to be able to deliver the product to them, for you to be able to explain how it works, for them to give you proper feedback. Within the sprint, you have daily meetings called stand-ups that they should be less than 15 minutes. Before Corona, it meant people physically stand in a small group. And in a stand-up, you say 3 things: what you did yesterday, what you plan to do today, and what impediments that you're having. Ideally, at the end of every sprint, You should have an incremental shippable product, so you can be able to then do the demo of the product. You can be able to do a retrospective of what happened within the sprint. Now, why use Scrum? I think 90% of software developers globally have come to adopt Agile, Scrum being among the most widely used framework of Agile. And it's because of one item which we said, high product quality. But let me put it this way. If you combine it with the second point of customer satisfaction, it means you are able to show the customer what you're doing early enough for them to say they don't want the product. So you also fail faster. You do not waste 3 months or 3 years on a project that the customer would then not be able to roll out or cannot be able to figure out how it fits into business. Now, among the things all new developers learn when you start to try and sell code in Kenya is Kenya has more politicians than in parliament with Raila and his crew. Everybody will come and give you a political story. Oh, we will help you make this thing. So you have so many customers that can make you do so much work in doing so much, and at the end of the day they will not be able to uptake it. So also from a developer's perspective, you need to get a framework which allows you to quickly be able to engage the customer fast enough without disappearing for 3 months and finding they change business, or they tell you, oh, we got somebody else, they already did the job. So you're able to keep up with the customer, and the customer is able to keep understanding what you're doing, and they're able to keep guiding you on what you do better. And mostly I try and encourage customers to start to say the modules they need to use so that those can be built and to start to be done. So Agile has quite a number of advantages to efficiency of development. And the second one is now I was reading we are changing the syllabus to the new curriculum. For the ones like me who did the 844, we suffered something called the number one problem. From when I went to nursery, the main question my parents wanted me to be is number one. Now you wonder, all the children who will be number one. Now that concept is beat up to you that even at the workplace you want to be number one, as in we have a bit of a number one problem. So that means if you are working as a team together, then you also want to be number one, and then that doesn't work, because mostly outside academia you need to really collaborate, and every single person needs to draw their strengths, learn the weak points, either to build on them or to then not do the things they are weak in, so that we can then be able to build one product. And there's an African proverb among the many ones. There's an African proverb which says the person who sells eggs in the marketplace is the one who is the most peaceful. They don't want stones thrown. The ones who sell avocados and mangoes can be a bit of a mchokozi. But the African proverb we are saying is, if you want to go fast, go alone, competing like boats. But if you want to go far, you need to go together. So Scrum is also a very effective tool to ensure people are able to work together. The dynamics of working together, especially for software products, are a bit complex, but that we leave it to the psychologists and the philosophers. In the Scrum framework, we divide now among the rules Scrum comes up to put in is first we get roles. Now the roles that we bring to play is we have a person we call a product owner. Now the product owner is a person within the team who liaises with the customer to be able to understand what the customer needs. Many times, especially in places like US, the product owner would actually belong to the organization that is in the product. So if I'm working for maybe Nation Media, the product owner would belong to Nation because they'd meet everybody who's using the solution. They'd give me the most feedback. They can be able to set up a team. So they can have all the dynamics required to be able to give me all the information. At times we get somebody called a proxy product owner to liaise between the organization, and the proxy product owner would then belong to the development team or be part of the development team. Now the team would comprise of everybody, would be the developers, the designers, the analysts, people to test, and then you have a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master would be then the one who tries to understand the Scrum framework and tries and puts in the rules to ensure everybody functions within the Scrum framework. Now going to the artifacts, which I'd already explained, you have the product backlog where you are putting in all the user stories or requests. You have the sprint backlog, which is what is set to be done. And then you have things like the burn down chart. When you start the sprint, you figure out how many units of metrics of work you'll do. And as you do them progressively, then you can indicate the chart. And as you chart per each sprint, you have a clear chart of what you're able to do and the remnant of what is left. There are a couple of ceremonies, and not wedding ones, within the framework. The first one is a sprint planning, which happens at the beginning of every sprint. The second one would be the sprint itself, with the main ceremony being the daily stand-up meeting, which I said you say what you did yesterday, what you are doing today, and any impediments you have. The Scrum Master is responsible for trying to help to solve the impediment that occurred. Then we have the sprint review or demo. When the sprint ends, then you need to say, okay, this is a product we did. And at times it can be a product, maybe you did marketing, this is the customers we added, this is a progress we've done. And then you have a retrospective. A retrospective is a look through the sprint to see what you did well in and what you didn't do well in. And this is done by every member writing those things on a piece of paper, and it's based on a whiteboard. Then you paste those things on a whiteboard, and then you're able to see which line has the longest list. So essentially we have those roles. Now going back to the number one problem, the Scrum Master and the product owners are not bosses. They still have to work as a team, even though you have a specific role. My first job in life was as kwa industrial area. I was doing metalwork ya kukata chuma. I met somebody called supervisor. I cannot even get into that. It's an emotional story. A Scrum Master is not a supervisor. They are a team member. So they need to be, they also pick up tasks, and they need to basically help the team to be more effective and efficient within the framework of Scrum and within the principles of Agile and agility. So the product owner gets frequent opportunities to be able to review and guide what needs to be done. So in the product owner is very critical in the sprint planning, so that they are able to have a very clear vision of what they need to be able to see at the end of every sprint. Once they are able to do that, then the Scrum Master needs to be able to help the team in tracking that and breaking down and picking up on what are impediments and being able to help get those resolved within the team, and to ensure the development team works as comfortably as possible, so that the customer, and most of the time, especially Kenyan customers, their expectation is for the most part extremely unrealistic. I think that is based on movies where a programmer just bangs on the keyboard and it makes sounds crack, 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 crack. And then they have hacked something or have written code, and they are getting to money making like the guys of Facebook. Coding doesn't work that way so much. There's a lot of reading and testing and failing. So again, the features, fixes, technical work, marketing, all those go to the product backlog. Every sprint we pick what needs to be picked in the sprint. We do the work and ensure there's a product that is done at the end of every sprint cycle. A lot of before COVID, most of the Scrum was really emphasizing getting these things done on a whiteboard. So a lot of the boards, it's a whiteboard which is drawn up, and you move the tasks around, and during stand-up you actually stand as a group. During demos you sit together in a room. While there can be no replacement for those human meetings, COVID has brought a huge complication. So we've gotten quite a bit of automation going, and for the webinar that we'll be having next Wednesday, we'll be using our Scrum Board to be able to do the backlog and the sprint planning. So we've had to, Scrum will have to evolve like everybody else to then have a mix of both online and face-to-face meetings and activities. Now, retrospectives, I don't think are very nice to do online, because for people who've done these retrospectives, even if you do a retrospective of yourself and say these are the things that are going right with me, these are the areas of concern, there's a bit of emotion. And in Scrum, you try and not accuse people. Sema Kamau akuwa nachukua tasks was not working very well. So there's a whole process to be able to moderate that. So for retrospective, a sticky board is the best, but you can have the feedback that originates from the retrospective being documented electronically, so that can be referred to easily, so that you're able to say we should do more of like for many, when people start Scrum, they discover they need to do more of clear sprint planning and breaking down the tasks to very doable tasks. And to me, a task is something you can do in a day. So you need to break down the user stories, into small tasks that everybody can be able to pick and complete, and be able to start to see the movement of tasks moving from tasks to review to done, so that as the sprint goes, that is very clear. Then you can start to know what to less do. For example, reduce on social media, and quite a bit of that, and what to fully stop doing. So you can be able to do an analytical evaluation of a retrospective. I'll use this last illustration to start to introduce what we'll be doing in the webinar coming Wednesday. Take an example that you have a business and COVID has hit, and these are normal retail business. Now the retro business decides they need to figure out how to venture into electronic space. So they need to do a website, social media. So they're wondering, how do you get all those things started? How do you move from, if you are maybe a hotel, how do you move from a place where you had some young men and young ladies ringing bells on the roadside to electronic, where you can get orders being sent in and deliveries done? So you start by just thinking out loud and coming up with a product backlog. Even though you write a product backlog item as big as, we need a website, we need social media links, we need, so you'd put all those things in the product backlog, and then you'd think, when you come to sprint planning, what do we do first? Then you'd think of the items that you need to pick. For example, the fastest thing may be to create a social media page. So if that is the fastest and you think is the one that can give you the nearest impact, it means then the task you put on a sprint backlog would be, as the business owner, I want to create a Facebook page so that I can be able to advertise my products and start to get customers interested in me, following me. You'd have another story of, you'd want to create maybe a LinkedIn page if you want to try and target professionals. Now when you now get to the tasks of what needs to be done in creating a Facebook page, there'll be task number one, create your own Facebook page if you don't have one, so that you're admin, because maybe you'd have also people who you know. Secondly, now create a page for the business. Once you create the page for the business, another task would be adding the details, getting some photos. So those would be then individual tasks. So come Monday, you'd pick in task number one, put it in progress. When it's finished, doing to done. So you'd only pick the sprint backlog, the only items that within the Scrum you'd be able to do, and then do that within the Scrum. And by the end of the sprint, maybe 2 weeks, then you can even do a demo, even though it's to your team. Then you're like, now we have a social media page, we already have this number of people following us, these are the graphics. Within that demo, somebody can raise that the graphics look so bizarre, they don't represent you. That means within that is a new backlog, product backlog that has originated. Maybe you create a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a LinkedIn page. Then you discover on LinkedIn or Twitter, the traffic you're getting is way less. In your next backlog, you may prioritize the one that you think you'll be able to get more traffic. So you're able to then do the next sprint cycle within that. Now, social media has one interesting aspect. When you post things, they move down. So that means for people who are now trying to Google your business, you may now need to put in a basic website with a contact us page. So those you continue doing that. So the retrospective, you'd say within the sprint, what did I do well in? Maybe I did well in, I passed the sprint, there was good teamwork. What we didn't do well in is we didn't have enough skill set to be able to do graphics design, so we struggled in graphic design. So you are saying, in your opinion, you need to either hire somebody of graphics design coming forward to the next sprint cycle. So within these, you start to enjoy the website, the social media, the business, the dynamics as you continue to build. And that is what agility and Scrum is all about. We are looking forward to getting our panel that will try and do this practically trying to put together a Scrum project online on our webinar, and then that will be also streamed live. We are still picking in the people to register. Kindly send us comments on our social media pages for DC Solutions Limited. Subscribe to our channel, and let's continue doing it Scrum. Thank you very much. Enjoy your afternoon.